the panel, Truth, what's our panel called again? So we're here to talk to some wonderful writers about truth and nonfiction and how they go about capturing the story and how they go about maintaining their own identities in the course of telling the story. So just some quick announcements. Be sure to turn off your cell phones. We don't want to be interrupted. Also, the signing areas, you'll go out to these doors. You'll turn right, and this is important. It's signing area number 5. This panel is going to last for 45 minutes, and then we'll have questions for the microphones here. Come on up and be sure to write down your questions. Keep them short, pithy. The festival is often no better than the people that bring their questions to the authors and have a chance to engage with the ideas that we're discussing, so we welcome your questions. But afterwards, if you didn't have a chance to talk to the authors, you'll have a chance to do so over in signing area number 5. Again, out those doors, turn right. Also, we're going to be taped on C-SPAN, so just wanted to let you know that this is going to be available to be seen perhaps at a later date on C-SPAN. All right. As I'm thinking about these 4 books, pretty wonderful books, I had a chance to sort of try to figure out what sort of common ground the 4 titles have. America, as it seems to me, seems obsessed lately with the strangers in our midst. You think about the series Breaking Bad, you think about the movie American Hustle. It's all about the sort of deceptions that surround us and the sort of lies we tell to ourselves. Either we've gotten very good at keeping secrets or we're getting very good at denying the truth. I'm not quite sure which. Perhaps it's a little bit of each, and I'm sure our panelists will have a chance to talk about this a little bit. That's the sort of overview I think I'd like to take with this panel today. And before I have the authors talk about their books and introduce them, I'd like to just introduce you to the panelists themselves. Annie Jacobsen was a contributing editor to the Los Angeles Times in 2010 when she first started to report on a secretive part of the American Southwest known as Area 51. The book, the story that ran in the magazine soon became a wonderful book that not only was praised for the research, but also for the deft writing. Annie brings the same skills to her latest book, Operation Paperclip, the secret intelligence program that brought Nazi scientists to America. Scott Johnson was a foreign correspondent for Newsweek for 12 years, covering the Middle East, Afghanistan, and Iraq. He was Newsweek's bureau chief in Mexico, Mexico City, Baghdad, and in Africa. And he's been honored by the Overseas Press Corps. He is a freelance journalist contributing to CNN, MSNBC, and NPR, as well as magazines such as Granta, Guernica, National Geographic Explorer. His latest book, The Wolf and the Watchman, A Father, a Son, and the CIA. Walter Kirn, you might be familiar with Walter through the movies. First there was Thumbsucker, starring Vince Vaughn and Keanu Reeves. Then there was Up in the Air with George Clooney. Hollywood obviously knows when a good project and a good book when it sees it and seized upon those. But lest we lose the fact that those were movies, they're also superb books. Funny, heartbreaking, poignant, wise, sardonic, all of Walter's trademarks, I think. He's also written 6 other books that take on American life, and his new book is a memoir, The Blood Will Out, the true story of a murder, a mystery, and a masquerade. And Deanne Stillman. Deanne has been called the Raymond Chandler of the New West. It's a wonderful title. In 2011, her book, her 2002, when did the 29 Palms book come out?
That first came out in 01,
okay.
The first edition.
There we are. The 2001 book about 29 Palms was called A Strange and Militant Story about an Important American Writer.
Hunter Thompson said that.
By Hunter Thompson.
Right.
None the less than Hunter Thompson blurbed her book. It's pretty great. Her 2008 book, Mustang, The Saga of the Wild Horse in the West, was named a best book by the Los Angeles Times. Her latest book, Desert Reckoning, A Town Sherriff, a Mojave Hermit, A Town Sherriff, a Mojave Hermit, and the Biggest Manhunt in Modern California History, was a winner of a 2013 Spur Award and was honored by the Los Angeles Press Club. So we have some great writers, some very accomplished books. And at this point, I'd like to turn to them and let them characterize their books to you, and then we can begin our discussion. Annie, how about you take it off?
Hello, I'm Annie Jacobsen. Welcome everybody to the Los Angeles Times Festival of Books, and thanks for coming to our panel. I write about war, weapons, U.S. national security, and the programs that keep them secret. And I began doing this with my book, Area 51. I interviewed 75 men who lived and worked at that secret base for extended periods of time, and it included pilots, spy pilots, scientists, and security guards. My new book, which is about Operation Paperclip, the secret intelligence program that brought Nazi scientists to America, is about this classified military program that involved 1,600 Nazi scientists who came here. And the program also had a very public, beneficent face. In other words, the War Department back in 1945 announced that we were going to bring the good German scientists here to America. And what my book does is I think it aims to reconcile the difference between the secret history and that public face. And one of the more interesting things that I was able to do, I think, in reporting this book was interview a number of the now old children of those ranking members of the Third Reich.
Scott?
Hi, I'm Scott Johnson, and I'll echo Annie's comments. Thanks very much for coming to the panel. It's great to see you all here. My book is about my relationship with my father. He was a case officer for the CIA for 25 years. I grew up moving all around the world. My father retired in the mid-90s, and during that time I became a journalist, a foreign correspondent, and I went on to cover many of the wars of the last decade, Afghanistan and Iraq, and various conflicts in Africa. And after 9/11, my father was recruited back into the CIA as a contractor. And so then what happened is that he and I sort of started going to many of the same places. So I would go to Afghanistan, and then a little while later, you know, here would come my dad, and he would be in Afghanistan. I would go to Iraq, and a little while later, here would come my dad, and he'd be there. So my book is sort of an exploration of that kind of dance that he and I undertook together. It's part geographical, part psychological, part emotional, and at the core of it is this question that I think drove me, which was, you know, who are you? That was my question for my father, and I think it's something that when you have a spy for a dad, it is a central question in your formative years, and then when you become a journalist, it becomes even more acute. So my book is an attempt to answer that question, and it's a journey that takes place over half a century and pretty much most of the world. So that's me. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott.
I'm Walter Kirn. My book is a strange doppelganger of Scott's. It's called Blood Will Out, and it's the story of my real friendship with a man who kind of didn't exist. Con man, imposter, and murderer known to the world as Clark Rockefeller, who was a friend of mine from 1998 to 2008, a friend who I didn't suspect was anyone other than who he said he was, and who in 2008 kidnapped his daughter after a custody hearing in Boston, and was revealed to be not an American, not a Rockefeller, and in fact a suspect in a 1985 gruesome murder and dismembering of a man from just outside Los Angeles in San Marino. I attended his murder trial in 2013 and was able to look back over my friendship with him and see all the ways in which, as Scott described it, we danced together in a sort of minuet of deception and self-delusion and vanity and posturing. My book asked the question, you know, how are we fooled and how do we fool ourselves? Not from the point of view of the person who does the